Hello, and thank you for joining me today for a brief discussion on the pathways to commercialization in the unmanned aircraft systems market. My name is Bill Edgar. I'm a managing director at IHS, where I lead the global commercial aerospace and defense consulting group. Today I'm going to spend a few moments covering some of the high-level issues that we're following right now in the commercialization for unmanned aircraft systems market. It'll be a brief overview in terms of where we are today and the state of play and where we've come from. Touch on some of the drivers that are leading commercialization in this space, as well as some of the challenges that exist to those drivers and to the development in that space. And finally conclude with a brief synopsis of where some of the leading opportunities are in the markets that exist looking at commercialization in the UAS area. The state of play right now in the UAS market is interesting. We're at a crossroads, a transition, so to speak. There's the challenges of coming off of a market that's been primarily driven by the military domain through operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other parts of the world, transitioning into a civilian set of applications for commercial uses as well as civilian federal uses. It's a very different environment when you go from military operation airspace to civilian operational airspace. The key focus is reliability, safety, and of course, fitting the right mission packages. It's key to be on the front end of this. We're developing across governments, across industry, the protocols, the operational frameworks, and the concepts that are going to support the regulatory environment right now. In most instances, industry is looking for that opportunity to get involved and to help guide and lead the development of those frameworks and protocols, as well as having a part of the development process from the products and solutions that are going to come out in an unmanned aircraft systems market that is fully integrated with manned and unmanned airspace. So in terms of what's driving this market space, we look at it from two primary sectors. Industry, in terms of the solutions that are out there to support commercial applications for unmanned aircraft systems. And civil government, in terms of the solutions particularly supporting mission requirements that civil federal agencies have and can be benefited from using unmanned aircraft systems. On the industry side, we look specifically at three sectors right now in terms of where there are most likely to be emerging opportunities over the near term. This is the energy sector, particularly when we look at monitoring and assessment and surveillance of infrastructure, as well as communications and broadcasting, the ability to support media requirements to reach areas that haven't been reached before, as well as to manage around infrastructure investments that can be quite significant. And finally, and slightly surprisingly, agriculture, particularly in the precision agriculture area, where the benefits of unmanned aircraft systems are potentially significant when you look at the operating costs on a day-to-day basis of managing manned systems versus unmanned systems. On the civilian government side, it's very much about how the missions that have been developed over the last decade and even further back can be applied and the requirements and roles that are necessary to support activities like border patrol, law enforcement surveillance, earth science and observation, land management. We see a great example just recently in the fires in Yosemite in the US, as well as some of the areas for communication support, emergency response, where in some cases, though limited in scale, we're already seeing applications of unmanned aircraft systems, certainly in the US, European countries such as France and Sweden, and even in Australia and South Africa. It's the opportunity for these systems to be applied in airspace that's covered by both manned and unmanned platforms that really provide the benefit and the opportunities to civilian as well as industry governments. And this is driving a lot of the focus right now on developing the policies and regulatory environments that support an integrated airspace. Beyond this, and more fundamental, it also improves and impacts the economies and just general operations. It reduces the costs, or at least objectively reduces the costs against manned aircraft, which can be fairly high and significant. From a procurement acquisition standpoint, less money for the platform, hopefully, as well as the operational costs. When you take that individual out of the loop and you take the size in many cases of the aircraft and platform out of the loop, you can reduce costs significantly. You can also, as a second area of focus for benefit, provide environmental improvements. Lower fuel consumption in many instances, as well as lower emissions. And it's something that we look at pretty closely. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you can reduce risk, and this is the risk to humans. Any opportunity you have to remove a human out of that specific part of the loop, then you can reduce risk significantly, as long as the system support components are there to provide a safe environment to operate. Well, there are a lot of challenges in commercialization for unmanned aircraft systems. This covers policy, regulatory environments, protocols for operations, but they all fundamentally resolve themselves in two key questions. How will unmanned aircraft systems address the 3 C's, command, control, and communications? And perhaps most importantly, how will they address sense and avoid, conflict? Ultimately, it comes down to safety. Most of these platforms, engineering design is focused on what you might find in a traditional manned aircraft platform. Certifications for actuation, flight control, triplex systems are all there. Fundamentally, one of the biggest challenges, and this is being faced by operators all over the world, is how do you manage the software components, which we look at very closely, to reduce risk and improve safety. In a typical certified manned aircraft, any software development associated with avionics has to have a fail rate of 10 to the -9. This is likely to need to be better when we're dealing with systems that have no one at the controls because they're autonomous, or even in remotely piloted drones and other aircraft platforms that fit within the UAS market space. However this develops over the next few years, and it will develop significantly, it's likely to be resolved by a collection of technologies that are put together in a layered process and implemented through a variety of regulations, policies, and operational frameworks that exist for combining integrated manned and unmanned airspaces. Well, in terms of where we're likely to see UASs flying over our heads in the near future, there are some clear leaders. Certainly the U.S. is in the front, and the Federal Aviation Administration has been very clear even since 2012 in terms of their roadmap and an objective for an integrated airspace, though limited, by late in 2015. Additionally, we're seeing significant progress in Europe through Eurocontrol, the air navigation service provider, as well as in the UK, where there's a consortium looking at the issues associated with unmanned aircraft systems in the national and civilian airspace. Additionally, we're also seeing it in some of the emerging markets. In particular, India, Brazil, and China all working through frameworks to develop regulatory and policies associated with civilian airspace and unmanned systems. The unmanned aircraft systems market is interesting for a variety of reasons. It's on the cutting edge in terms of what's out there in the future of technology and looking at aviation solutions. It's also a very complex environment because of the historical legacy of program developments and platforms and the applications across a variety of different sectors, the commercial side as well as the civilian side, not to mention what we've seen in the military. Very much like the complexity that exists in the unmanned aircraft systems market, IHS offers a variety of solutions that cover complex areas of business and government. Much as we've seen in terms of commercial opportunities in the unmanned aircraft systems markets, energy, agriculture, communications, telecommunications, media, and the civilian areas, border control, homeland security, earth observation, land management, IHS, through its solutions, provides the data, the knowledge, expertise in solutions that cover all of those areas. And additionally, with brand items like IHS Janes, provides the expertise in the platforms and industry that supports those solutions in the unmanned aircraft systems market. Together, those pieces bring a powerful solution set for industry and for government as they consider how best to address commercialization in the unmanned aircraft systems market. I think it's important to note in terms of where this market is going, commercialization is something that's going to be quite dynamic over the next few years. It's going to involve a lot of coordination and development, and it's going to involve a significant amount of industry's participation, which we're seeing right now. What's likely to happen is there will be a concerted effort led out of the US and Europe to set the framework for the future of integrated airspaces for manned and unmanned systems. And certainly we at IHS will be right on top of it as we move forward into uncharted areas on international commercialization for unmanned aircraft systems.